We're extending Rodney's car here and just going to whack the front of this. And I'm BC, this is Spirit Cars. We're going to try to do a real instructional video, aren't we, Josh?
Yes.
From the beginning. So today, what we're going to do, Rodney's got a really nice car, but he wants to make it a lot nicer. He's a little bit taller. This is the Spirit 23 Extended T. We built it, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. You can kind of see when we extended it, there's a little bit in the door, there's a little bit in front, we put a little bit in the back, and it all looks pretty symmetrical. Rodney, you can see some holes here. It had a soft top on it. He wants to have a hard top with a working window in the back. He wants airbags in the back of it. And also what he wants now is he wants an extra 4 inches in the front, 4 or 5 inches. He's just a little bit bigger, and his legs, and he wanted some more room. So I was looking at it. On the Spirit frame, we're 26.5 OD wide, and it's a parallel frame. You can see the frame over here. Now, if I'm going to cut this, I guess we'll start by saying, think the project out all the way. Don't just say, I'm going to cut this, or I'm going to cut it here, and then when you cut that, try to say, okay, then I'll do this, and then, or if I cut it here and move it out, well, I've got to make a blend into that. If I cut it here, well, can I really get through the insert, and do I want the door to look bigger? If I cut it here, you know, where am I going to get my 4 inches from? And then when I do get my 4 inches, how am I going to put my 4 inches into the frame here? So there's more than one thing that's got to happen at once here, although you start with it one thing at a time. You can eat an elephant, but you got to do it one bite at a time. And the same thing, when you do a car, don't get overwhelmed at the big project. That's where I was this morning. I was overwhelmed. I came in and it's just like, there's stuff everywhere. Well, I started by taking the garbage out. Cleaned up my area, cleaned up this area, talked to Rodney this morning. I thought about it. We're here. If I take and I add my 4 inches here, I want to keep my firewall in the same position it was to the steering box, to the motor, to everything. But I need to get 4 inches more in the frame. So I'm going to be the same from here back. So I really want my rear wheels and everything to stay in the same place. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut, you can see the mount here, so the bracket for my rear radius rods. What I'll do is I'll cut in front of that bracket and put my 4 inches right in here. This has standard brakes. He's wanting a power brake, so we're going to be taking this out anyway. I do want to leave my brake pedal in the same place because my firewall and all that is going to be moved forward, but I want just the front moved forward to match the motor. So I want my brake pedal in the same place, so I may need to have a longer brake rod. He wants to have a 700 R4 transmission where this now has a 350. So that's going to make this transmission cross member come back a little farther. So we're going to have to remove it anyway. So it doesn't matter about that, but I do want to be in front of the brackets for the rear radius rods and behind my rod for the brake pedal. So I need to sit my 4 inches in here. Body mount tab will stay the same, so I need to actually, if I go in front of my body mount tab here, right here, so if I make my cut right here, I can use my same body mount holes, and I put 4 inches here, I go right in front of my bolt here, and I've extended my frame 4 inches, so I got it. Now, where am I going to put it in the body? I was thinking about it, and what I like to do is, I like to get a visual. I'm a papered engineer. This is the kind of paper I have. I just cut me some patterns, put it up there. I cut a copy of the firewall. Tape it on. So I've taped it together. I've got at least something I can look at now. And since I'm making a T-bucket, I want it to look like a T-bucket. We've created things that are just one off the wall, one off. And that doesn't make it, it's cool. There's a lot of stuff like that that's cool. But since this is a T-bucket, I do want it to continue to look like a T-bucket, and I want it to be in proportion. So now we can stand back. And honestly, I don't think it looks that bad. It comes around. And by coming to the front on a Spirit T-bucket, there's a hood lip on a T-bucket. I can go right on that hood lip. It's 26.5 OD for where the frame's going to go down. I'm just coming out parallel on both sides, and I'm adding 4 inches just straight. And it's already been blended to straight right here anyway, so I can just smooth that in pretty easy. So I like that look, so now how am I going to do it? And I've thought about this already. I've actually looked at it, and talked about it, and we got Rodney's approval. Although I'm going to talk to you again, Rodney, to make sure that you like what you see here. You like my explanation. I said I'm going to need to cut the floor, and he had a question, why do I need to cut the floor? I marked it. You can see we have a toe, a kick plate up here, kind of angles up, and there's a little bit of a transmission hump. Our floor, there's a fiberglass floor under here. Then there's a product called Nitacore on top of that, a 1/2 inch stiffener, and then there's this insert, which is fiberglass again. So if I took along this line here, where I've got my tape line, and cut it around there, now all that's left on here is a flat floor. I can take this and move it out. I may have to, once it's cut out, trim this flat, or straight, parallel, and I can move this. I'm cut out in the floor, and I'm going to go ahead and cut in the center of this. You can probably see this relief area where the hood lip would be. I'm going to cut it in the center of that. I'm going to come all the way around the center, and since I've cut it loose in the floor, I can actually move this whole firewall section forward 4 inches. And I'll send that over to the chassis shop, have Sean work on that, and I'll probably be cutting this. We may do that early in the week next week. But before I put it back together, I want to put the body back on the chassis. And you can see we use a 2-inch ID PVC tube, so our steering column can come down through there. We're extending it 4 inches, and we already used we're a Flaming River dealer. We use the longest steering column that Flaming River makes, so we'll use the same steering column, and what I may have to do is add just a D shaft coming out of it a little bit. And now since I'm coming out, the angle here is going to change just slightly. I would say it may change a degree, maybe 2 degrees. So I'll cut this tube out, rearrange the tube onto the steering box, get that all set up before I even glass it together probably. I'll have it set up, and then I can just cut a strip or multiple strips of glass, and I can glass it in using this lip. Glass it on the lip here and glass it on the lip there. Put my body in, turn it over, glass the floor together, glass it from the top, glass it from the bottom, get it all together. So it's really doesn't look to be that big of a project. Something like this, it's, you know, we've done it, like we say around here, a lot. It's the same, only different. We've done the same thing, only different, lots and lots of times. So we've done similar to this, only different. And I'm guessing it's going to take me about 3 days to get it finished, start to finish, body worked in primer. So you figure whatever that is, 24 hours. So that's our estimate. It takes 24 hours to do that. Of course, we've done this a long time. I've been doing this for, golly, 40 years now. So it's a little easier to think through the process once you've done it before. Start by thinking through the process. You could save yourself hours by not having to back up so you can move ahead. I just like to move ahead all the time instead of, ooh, I shouldn't have done that, or I should have done this first, and back and forth. So if you have a 23 and you don't fit, you can extend or do Sometimes it may be more advantageous if you just sell the project and buy a new project. Sometimes you can just take what you have if you really like what you got. Putting the pre-thought in, it reminded me today when I was cutting it. I never give my kids a car. They had to earn their own, but they all had late model cars, and the way I did that, I just got them wrecked cars. So it'd be a nice new car, except the back would be gone, and so I'd find another one that was either the same. I know my daughter, Josh's wife, Janelle, we had, I forget what her first car was. What was that? Alumina? Something. It was something, but it's a little different model back, a year different. We cut the car in the middle. We put them both together, and you just really got to think about it. You got to overlap. You got to careful your welding, but that's kind of what we did here.
Contour.
A contour. It was a that's right. It was a Ford. Yep. So we took, and then my son, all my kids, and I made them help me do it too. It wasn't just here's a freebie. You're gonna have to pay for it. You're gonna have to help me do it. And they got a really nice car when they were done. So when I was cutting this, I was thinking about that. Why don't you get in here and kind of look at it? We spent a lot of time thinking. I'm not going to say as much time thinking as I did cutting, but I wanted to cut once and not have too much cut off. So what I did, and it really helps to know the inner structure of what you're dealing with. And since we build this car, it's a Spirit car, I happen to know what the inner structure was. If you've seen the wiring, once we screw these on, the wiring block just snaps into that. So I was able to undo that, and we'll show that here in just a second. The steering wheel we talked about last week, I'm just going to have to change this at a little bit different angle to match the box. You can see our floor comes around. So this would have been under the car. This is where the steering box is. The floor comes around. This is where the transmission goes. So I cut the entire transmission hump out. So all this has been raised. If you look in the floor, it's flat. And then this is going to angle back on the inside. I'm going to have to trim a little bit more out. I left that in there so I could show you. And what I did on the hood lip area, I left half of the hood lip here, and I left half of the hood lip on here. So I can wrap my glass on top of this. So I've got to cut, and what I cut, if you look in here, I'm in my body mount holes right here, if I line it up a little better. So right here is my body mount hole. I've got my body mount hole here. I can bolt the body right back down where it was. So in the back, I'm going to be good with my back wheels. Everything's the same. Let me set this back up in here. You can look from the inside. Now, as I move this forward, I tried to describe it Friday. I had a tape mark here. You can still see one of the tape marks. But what I can do now, you can see the steering or the fuse block. I just unplugged it. It's going to push back, go the same place. When I move this forward, I'm going to cut between the front body mount here and the brake pedal. So what's going to happen, I can bolt my body down, move my frame forward, use the same brake mount, and the brake will come up through the floor here. What I'm going to do is have to fill here, this little gap, whatever it's going to be. 4 inches I think is what we've determined. At that point, once we know how far out we want to go, then we can cut the frame. Someone made a good point, a valid point last week about are we going to notch the frame, or are we going to butt weld it, or how are we going to do that for strength. Our frame is 3/16. So if we bevel the edges and just weld it, it should be good, but that's probably not what we're going to do. Have I got dust enough on something to show you? Doesn't look like. Here, right here. So if I got both frame rails coming, if I notch it down and come through like that and weld here, that's going to be a little stronger than if I just cut the frame and weld it solid. Can you even see that in the picture? Yes. There? But what we're probably going to do, I'm going to cut it like this, and I will sleeve it. I'll take a piece of steel and slide it up into the frame rails, and I'll cut a hole. So what I'll do is I'll plug weld that piece of steel in there. I can grind this back, and that'll let me get real good penetration through the two sides. Even though that inner steel is not going to be, it will actually be welded to it, but it'll let you get real good penetration in the weld going through. So be aware of the structural integrity of if you cut something in half and put it together, whether it be any car, it doesn't matter. Whether you're subframing a truck with an old Volare front end, that we did a lot of those, or things like that. Just be aware of your structure. I was concerned up front that I like it to stay in proportion. I don't want to look like a one-off custom that you're wondering what it is. We want it to look like a T-bucket. So before I did any of this, if you happen to see it Friday, I mocked it up. I went ahead and taped this on here. This was off the frame, and I had it out so I could stand back and I could look at it, and you can kind of tell now it's going to come straight out here, and I think it's going to look good. It'll look like it all belongs, and it's not going to stick out. So put it back together. I'll grind. I can take this insert piece out. It's just kind of together through now. So I'll pull this insert out. I'll get this glassed from the inside first. Then I'll V this down, and I'll lay a glass inside of this before I even put the outside piece on, probably. And I'm just thinking out loud, so as I'm doing it, we'll figure it out better. But then I'll just glass. What I'll probably do is make a thin piece here, as I put it together, and so I can wrap it around. So, I mean, when you stand back, think about it. That's my main advice on this. Think about it, think about it, think about it. And again, we'll trim these edges off over here so that it comes down flat, fits into that, and the floor, you won't even be able to tell that we cut it. This was one of the first turnkey extended XLT extended Spirit cars that we did. So anyway, what Rodney wanted, I'll push this over here so you can see, he wanted another 4 inches or so of legroom. So we decided if we cut it here, we just pull it forward. We're going to pull it forward 4 inches, and then re-glass the whole thing back together. Project we'll show you when we're doing it. What I need to do first, though, is go ahead and get my frame 4 inches longer. And now my back, I want to continue to keep my body where it was. I want my bed to be in the same place in relationship to the wheels. My body bolts, these are my body bolts here. So my body should be able to bolt in the same place. The master cylinder we're going to leave in the same place so you can access it under this seat. But what I'm going to have to do when we get done, I've left my brake pedal in the front side. So the brake pedal is going to come up through the cowl where it did before. I'm leaving my steering box in the same place, so it's going to come down. I'll have to change the angle just a little bit on the steering column because of that 4 inches. It may give me another degree or so, and the way we do it, it fits really tight and nice, so we need to make sure it fits better. First thing is we need to make sure it's flat on something. So since it's got the paint and everything else is going on, rather than stick it back into the jig table and try to make it work there, we took a couple 2x3. We built this car. It was a turnkey we built, I don't know, 7 years ago maybe, somewhere in there. And it was one of our first XLTs. It's our extended version. We call it an XLT turnkeys that we ever did. So he bought it from the customer that had us build it for him, and he's just brought it back, and we're doing some modifications for it. One of the modifications, he's a little bit bigger. He wanted 4 inches added into the cowl section here, so you have a little more foot room. He'd want airbags in the back. A few other things we're doing to it. But it's about extending the frame and sleeving the frame and where to cut it to make sure that, right now I've got the body, the original part of the body is on the frame, so the bolt holes are the same for the body mounts, and when you put the rear tires and wheels on it, they're going to be in the same position. But I had to move everything forward in the front here, and he's actually got a blower on the car now, and he wanted a little bit more room on the firewall for the motor. So we're going to move, not on the firewall, on the radiator. It was real tight in the front. So we want to move the motor back about 3/4 of an inch. He's also going to go with a 700 R4 transmission instead of a 400, which it had. So we're going to have to move the trans mount back, which we haven't done yet, and we're going to make it a removable trans mount. So what I want to show today, I think, is we're finishing up the fiberglass panels. We put 2 panels here to start with, and our hood, or our cowl section, has got a little recess area. You can put a hood on it. So what we did first, we cut it off in the middle of that recessed area, moved it forward. I put 2 fiberglass panels, one here and one on this side, to kind of position the whole thing to get us our 4 inches forward what we wanted. What we did, we cut a panel from here to here, and we sanded it down real thin, the fiberglass panel, so it was very flexible, and we bent it across this edge, taped it down, bonded it from the inside. Let's see up in there, you can see we've got it all glassed up around up in here. This white stuff is putty to help make, so there's no air gaps in there, and we roll it and we'll sand this a little bit more. The same over here. So what we had in the front here then, between here and here, and the same over here, between here and here, we had that 4-inch gap. Now we've got this product called, what is it called?
Plascore.
Plascore. It's fiberglass. It's plastic in the middle. It's a 1/2 inch thick. So that means our bottom floor here is a 1/2 inch thick. So we happen to have some scrap of that. We cut it. We added it in here. We fiberglassed it in. And this morning I did the body work on the bottom side of the floor. We like to have the bottom of our cars slick. So what we're going to do now is go ahead. I've got the piece I took out of our insert. This would have been our insert piece. And it had the hole already for the steering column, and all this was already on it. So what we need to do next is get this positioned up in place. So it'll go all the way forward, and you can see how much we've added. We've added this distance to the entire car. So what we'll do is we'll get this positioned where it goes and glass this in. I'll probably take this off and go flat here because the transmission won't be in the way anymore. And he's going to use a different style shifter. I don't know if he's using a slap shifter or whatever, but it's got a cable going to it instead of like the low car that mounts on top.
No shifter.
No shifter.
Column mount.
Oh, we're doing a column shifter. Okay, okay. That's right. So anyway, we won't have any hole in the floor for the shifter. It'll just be you need a little bit of a hump there. So we'll glass this in next and do it. I talked about, we changed the angle of the steering column just slightly because that 4 inches is going to make the column, instead of maybe this angle, it may make it that angle, a couple inches. So I think I'll show you how we do that. And this will apply whether you extend it or whether you just get, say, one of our cars or anybody's car for that matter, and how a good way to put a steering column in. I use a piece of 2-inch ID PVC tubing. I grind it real smooth. I leave it extra long, and it just slips right over. If you use an original style GM column, it's a 2-inch OD on the column, so a 2-inch ID pipe would work fine. If I did it, this is a Flaming River. We're a Flaming River dealer, but I did it, has the same. So you can see the hole up in here is a little bit bigger. So once this is attached and mounted in there, and you can see that that's at an angle, well, if you look in the front here, obviously my firewall is straight, so you've got a little V up in this area. That's what we're going to do is we're going to put this piece of tubing through that V area, and then we're going to bond it with a putty or bonding material in there. So the way I fit it, stick it through. Okay, I've got a little notch up in here where it goes into the column. If you just take a piece of 2-inch tape, that's generally enough to hold the column up to where it goes. So I'm pushed up into that, and I'm coming down here, what I was saying, I was going to need to change the angle of this a little bit. Normally this column will drop directly into my steering joint. It'll go right into it. So what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to cut down into this a little bit farther. We'll change the angle of the column, just make it down a little bit more. And I leave this 2-inch ID PVC tubing come through this side, and I'll leave it through on the floor side a little bit. I don't know if it's through now. You can see it's up through there. And once I get it all bedded in, and of course I'm going to put this in first before I install the column, so this piece will be glassed in. Once I get that where it goes, I've got it stabbed in. Being triangulated, when it's stuck into your steering box, coming through the firewall, it's not going to want to fall down, because the triangulation there is going to hold it from falling down. And you're still going to put a column drop up on top, but the main purpose of that column drop is to tighten that steering column down so the whole column doesn't twist. I mean, it will help it from falling down some, but mainly it's to keep it from twisting. So I'm doing my body work on it now. You know, like I said, we've glassed the inside there and we glassed some on the outside, and doing my body work. And I'll get my lines clean. And this is a Spirit extended XLT, and it's extended 4 inches of our regular one. And this is another 4 inches. So if you stand back and look at it on the profile, it doesn't look silly. It doesn't look like it's all been added in one area. I mean, if I would put all 8 inches in the door, that would have, I mean, you could tell that. But we've got some here, some here, some here, and now an extra 4 inches up here. And once I blend this in, I think it's going to look pretty good. Well, from here, where your feet go to the bottom of the seat is 33 inches, 33 and a half inches. From the firewall to the back, on the inside of the insert is 58 inches. Our width, these are questions we get quite often, isn't it? Our width here is 40 and a half. Back here it's going to be a little bit more. Well, if I go here, about 41, then it starts tapering down again. Overall, the height of the bucket, 22 and a half generally. If you want to extend your bucket, a lot of guys, some of the smaller buckets, especially some of the ones made in the 60s that are just the early ones, it's just not very comfortable to drive. There's a lot to be said for the cool factor, but if you can't drive it very comfortable, you might want to go ahead and tackle this project. I've said it probably every time I've talked about this project, and I'll say it one more time. Think about it before you cut. It's a whole lot easier, just cut it once. This isn't like a board where you cut twice, measure once and cut twice. No, we want to cut once, get it figured out where you want to do it, especially in the frame, so you don't have to move too many brackets. Get your frame stretched. Quality welds on your frame. You don't want your frame breaking. Just quality welds on your frame. Make sure you're glassed both sides, glass good. You don't want a stress crack to come in here after you've got a nice, high-dollar paint job on it. This one's going to get, well, for one, this color's not cheap. This is a Lamborghini orange, high pearl, and I don't know what it costs per gallon, but it's not cheap. And I think we're going to put ghost blends on this now, aren't we?
Yes.
So it's going to have a custom paint job on top of custom paint. So the last thing you want is to put all that effort and energy and money into a paint job that's going to show a crack along the line. That would just not be a good thing.